Gathered friends, listen again to our legend of Wallabar. In a time, before the Great Isolation and the time of the masks, our hero was on a journey with his friends to a center of local commerce. Together, they came across many interesting places, such as the shops of GameStop and FYE, but not Hot Topic, until they happened upon the mysterious kingdom of Five Below. Inside, among the hallowed halls of unreasonable junk at reasonable prices, Wallabob located the video game section. There he happened upon a game he had never heard of before, an accursed object that would take him on one of his most terrible and trying challenges he had ever faced. His Beast Quest!
When it comes to buying or collecting video games, consumers have a variety of options to choose from. You can obviously go to your generic big box stores where you're 99% guaranteed to get a game in perfect condition and maybe even at a good price, but your selection might be limited. You could go to GameStop, where you'll probably have a better selection and maybe even a good price, but your games will probably look like this. And then there's your mom and pop local video game stores, where nothing is new, but most things are pristine. Just don't count on getting anything below asking price, because typically you'll end up paying for what the game is actually worth, just like buying online from eBay. But what if you wanted to be able to buy games with no guarantee of availability, selection, or quality, but you'll always know exactly how much everything costs? If you happen to fit into that niche, then Five Below is the place for you.
These toys, $5 and below.
$5?
Yep.
$5?
Yep.
$1?
Yep.
Five Below is a retail chain in the United States that first opened its doors in 2002, with the simple goal of being a store all about fun. You never know what you'll find, but usually you know exactly how much it costs, as the name Five Below implies. To be honest, I'm not a fan of Five Below. In my experience, it's usually loud, chaotic, messy, and filled with tons of stuff that's not really worth spending money on, and their commercials creep me out. But they have video games. Sorta. For $5. Every time I've visited a Five Below, they always have about 50 sealed copies of a specific game or two, usually of varying rareness or quality. Back in the summer of 2019, I just happened to stumble upon a Five Below where they had sealed copies of first-party Nintendo 3DS games, for $5. It was at this point that I thought, maybe Five Below isn't that bad if they can score games for this kind of price. Which brings us to a couple months ago. I went with my friends to a Five Below, and on this particular day, they had a huge stack of the game Beast Quest for the PlayStation 4. All I could think was, the heck is a Beast Quest? Now normally I wouldn't advocate for randomly purchasing games on a whim, but there was just something about the gorgeous cover art and the fact that it was a game that, until then, I had never even heard of. And the fact that it was only $5, I figured, why not take the plunge? So I embraced my biggest flaw, I promptly bought the game, took it home, put it on my PS4 shelf, and forgot about it. Which brings us to a couple weeks ago. I was going through my PS4 games looking for something new to play, and all I could think was, the heck is a Beast Quest? I was about to pass it over when I noticed the headline on the back of the box, from the best-selling adventure series, and that's when my research mode kicked in. I found out that Beast Quest is apparently a popular children's chapter book series, which I found really interesting. See, the number of video games directly based on books is kind of a small niche market. Sure, you have your Witchers and your Metros, and even that weird Daniel X game on the Nintendo DS. And there are plenty of games based on movies based on books, but video games that are directly based on books is a pretty limited pool. Because of this, I decided I wanted to read some of the original Beast Quest books and then play the game to compare it to the source material, and also just to see if I really got my money's worth with my purchase. Luckily, my awesome sister is a children's librarian and hooked me up with lots of entries in the Beast Quest series to borrow. Honestly, just looking at these covers gets my nostalgia stirring in the right ways. The cover illustrations by Ezra Tucker are gorgeous, and remind me of my love for the cover art of Tim Jacobus, the original Goosebumps artist. So, the Beast Quest series are chapter books written by a collective of authors known only as Adam Blade. The series was aimed primarily at young boys beginning in 2007. The series is quite popular in the UK with over 122 books? Jeez Louise, that's like 9 or 10 books a year! Despite being a series aimed at children, the illustrations already have me excited to dive into reading. I was gonna make a joke about how these are going to be below my reading level, but considering that since I've left high school, the most I read are comic books, manga, and long Twitter and Reddit posts. So this is probably a good place to start for me. So here we go, the first book, Furno the Fire Dragon. Spoilers, I guess? The story begins with a young boy named Tom. Tom lives in the kingdom of Avantia with his aunt and uncle because his mother died when he was young, and his father, Taladon, abandons him to go on a mysterious quest. Tom longs for adventure, and when the opportunity arises after his village's crops keep getting burnt, he leaves his town to travel to King Hugo's castle to seek aid. After realizing he is unlikely to get a chance to speak with the king, Tom sneaks into his chamber, where he meets King Hugo and the wizard Aduro. Aduro recognizes Tom as the son of Taladon, and tells him that the kingdom is in disarray because of the ancient beasts who are supposed to protect the kingdom, have been enslaved and turned evil by the wicked wizard Malvel. As the son of Taladon, Aduro gives Tom an enchanted key that can unlock the accursed collars on the beast's neck to set them free, so that the beast may return to protecting the kingdom as they did before Malvel enslaved them. Tom sets off on his new horse Storm to take on Furno the Fire Dragon. Along the way, he meets Elena, an archer, and her wolf Silver, who joins him on his quest to free Furno. Eventually they find Furno, and together they are able to free him, who leaves it behind a scale that when Tom places it on his shield makes him immune to fire. With the first beast freed, Tom and Elena set off to free the remaining beasts, which then comprise books 2 through 6. I'm not really planning on summarizing those for this video just for the sake of time, but from here on out, the remainder of the books, from what I can tell, are kind of rinse and repeat. Find a beast, free them, use artifact to give Tom some sort of supernatural ability, like the ability to breathe underwater or be protected from extreme temperatures. Because these books are basically shorter than the instruction manual for Trauma Center, if I had access to the original 6, I would have loved to have finished them all for the sake of context for understanding the game and for this video, but I only have a few from the original story arc. Already, just from what I read, I can picture some pretty great ideas for how this series could be adapted into a video game. Maybe it's a Monster Hunter clone where you traverse huge plains and have to work together to take down the beasts, or maybe it's like Dark Souls and you have to focus on huge scale tough as nails boss battles. Even the sequence where Tom sneaks into the king's court had the theme from Ocarina of Time playing in the back of my mind, and those upgrades that Tom gets from the beast could definitely emulate Zelda's gameplay style of using new items to solve puzzles and dungeons. My mind was whirling, and I couldn't wait to try the game. The only lingering problem in my mind was I bought the game at 5 below. And in reality, a game only ends up at 5 below if A, it didn't sell well, B, it's god-awful, or C, both A and B. But really, with some really great source material to work from, how bad can it be?
Oh my god!
So this is Beast Quest on the PlayStation 4. The game was developed by Taurus Games and published by Maximum Games in 2018 for the PS4, Xbox One, Microsoft Windows, and the Nintendo Switch, with physical versions for the main consoles available in the UK, but only available physically for the PS4 and Xbox One in North America. And where do I even begin with this game? I guess I'll begin with the story. For the most part, the game actually tries to stick to the original plot and lore of the source material, which is always nice to see. The only major changes I really noticed were that the entire beginning of the first book was cut out. Instead of going to the castle, Tom is just randomly visited by Aduro, who nearly kills a bird, for some reason. Also, Storm the horse just doesn't exist. But Elena and Silver the wolf are still present in the game as ultimate summons in battle and in cutscenes. Speaking of battles, let's talk about the main gameplay. I would never call Beast Quest a clone of Dark Souls, but the influences are so obvious that it's really hard to ignore. Beast Quest is a very untraditional RPG that heavily borrows elements from Dark Souls and mixes in inspiration from Punch-Out. You traverse around the map where you can see your enemies. When you get close to them, the game transitions into a battle mode where Tom's position is more or less fixed in that he can only move left or right to specific points on the field of battle. Unlike your traditional RPGs, Beast Quest has no turns. Instead, it relies on the player's timing to use a mix of heavy and light attack combos on monsters. The player also has to watch the monsters carefully, as all of their attacks are telegraphed, having the player decide if they need to block or dodge. In some cases, certain glowing red attacks have to be dodged, otherwise the player will take damage no matter what. But if you time your dodge correctly, it allows for a counterattack that deals massive damage. As you attack, you build up your ultimate meter, which can then be used to summon an ally for an extra helpful attack. When the battle is complete, instead of being awarded experience points, you're awarded with ability points, which depending on how well you do in the battle with your timing can earn you bonus AP, which can then be used to purchase upgrades to Tom's health, attack, defense, and such. It's also possible to earn gold and AP points by doing side quests for other NPCs in towns. These are not required, which honestly is a blessing, because for every one that I seem to come across, the side quest was nothing more than a simple fetch quest for objects that honestly are not really further than a few yards away from the NPC. Aside from the side quests, as someone who is not really a fan of a traditional turn-based RPG, I actually like the way the game shakes up the free-flow combat. But unfortunately, this is where the game begins to run to a plethora of its problems. While I can appreciate games that don't bog you down with unnecessary tutorials, Beast Quest neglects to tell the player a lot of useful information. There's a tutorial Aduro gives you in the beginning about combat and how to move and jump. Yes, this game has platforming, but from then on, it basically leaves you hanging on how everything else works. I've looked back at my footage and I don't think I missed a tutorial, but as far as I can tell, the game neglects telling you very vital information like what you're supposed to do with your AP, where your skill tree is located, how to swap out summons, and why you keep earning gold in the game. Like, it never really explains even the purpose of why you are earning gold. It wasn't until I actually found a shop almost like towards the end of the game that wasn't pointed out on the map and didn't show any sort of indication that it was a shop in any sort of way that I actually was able to spend my gold. Lots of things that are very key to the overall gameplay are largely ignored and left to the player to figure out, which, if the vagueness was frustrating to me, I can only imagine how annoying the game could be for its younger target audience. Secondly, while I like the unique take on the RPG genre, once I did figure out how to use the AP I was earning, the loopholes of the game became very clear. Because you can choose how to spend your AP, I largely ignored the skill tree branches that are meant to unlock new abilities, like fire and ice resistance, and solely poured them into stat upgrades, because the game will just let you. That made battles go from something like this to something like this. While not necessarily a bad thing, it's an odd choice that lets you cheese all the challenge out of the game very quickly, and the game is constantly finding new ways to make the gameplay even easier as you go along. As you free each of the beasts, there's only 4 in the game for some reason. Instead of gaining a new ability like in the books, you unlock that beast as a summon, which is actually a pretty cool idea, and harkens back to the idea in the lore that these beasts are actually supposed to be protectors of the kingdom. But these summons are so overpowered, they basically assure a victory as soon as they're used. Beyond gameplay, we need to actually talk about the quality of Beast Quest. This game is awful. I don't understand how something as beautiful as this can wind up looking like this. I want to believe that the studio actually did have great art direction and just poor execution. I mean, I actually do love some of the enemy designs, particularly the abstract tear shape of the wolves' bodies. It's like in the right hands this game could have looked better, but instead we got Akiak! Akiak! The animations are painful to watch too. Everything just moves so stiffly. Tom even has to teleport backwards in order to do a jump and grab animation. Everything about playing the game just feels broken. Even the interface is weird. It has this cheap mobile game look and feel, and honestly I wouldn't be surprised to find out that this was originally a mobile game. I mean, just look, it was originally a mobile game! While the final product is visually different, it's clear that the console game was based on the mobile phone version, and sadly, the phone version feels like it does it better? Anyway, walking around in the game feels terrible, as you're constantly stopping and tripping up on the game's geometry. Jumping doesn't feel good either. It doesn't matter if you give a short tap or a long press to the button, it's basically 50-50 about how Tom will actually jump. Sometimes he does it right, sometimes he's just like, eh. Beast Quest doesn't ignore your sense of hearing either. The voice acting in this game ranges from serviceable to god-awful.
But I saw it.
I believe you.
And worse, Tom just doesn't shut the heck up.
Oh, love me some loot! Stop eyeballing me! Take that, vile spider insect creature!
He repeats lines over and over again, and even tries to interrupt Malville during some of his evil ranting. He also has this catchphrase that I don't ever remember reading in the books that's beaten to death.
While there's blood in my veins, while there's blood in my veins, while there's blood in my veins, while there's blood in my veins.
The game is full of glitches too. At one point when I died and respawned, I couldn't move Tom anymore, so I had to restart in order to make it work properly. Also, navigation is a nightmare. Your overworld map isn't even a real map. It's just a list of fast travel points between campfires. Your only real map is the mini-map in the corner, which only shows what's already a few feet in front of you and is largely useless. Not once, but twice, when I had completed a boss fight, the game takes you back to a previously explored area, but on a new path that can only be accessed from the point where you defeated the boss. But the game's mini-map and Golden Dust navigation system are so poorly integrated, I could find myself going the wrong way, getting stuck, and having to use the campfires to teleport back to where I was supposed to be. The problem with that, though, is that because the overworld map literally gives no indication where any of the fast travel points actually are, the only way I could figure out how to get back on track was to watch someone else's walkthrough and teleport to every single fast travel point until my mini-map matched theirs. It's broken, frustrating, and happened to me twice. Luckily for me, the game is incredibly short. In total, I maybe only spent about 7 hours playing the game until I got to the end. To beat the game, you have to free the 4 beasts. As you approach the final battle with Epos the Phoenix, a boulder collapse separates Tom from Elena and Silver, and Tom must go into battle alone. Or so I thought. I figured with this dramatic cutscene they showed, they just wouldn't let the player access Elena and Silver as your summon. But when I got into battle... What the? So my summon completely one-shot kills Epos. Malvel shows up mad as frick, and then Epos just...
Epos, no!
What the heck? After Epos's apparent suicide mission, he's reborn, our heroes feel hopeful about the future, and the credits roll. And then... nothing? The game lets you run around and fight monsters and complete side quests, but there's no real post-game content. Not that I was really expecting any to begin with. And honestly, that pretty much wraps up Beast Quest. While I really enjoyed the journey of finding this game and reading the books for research, the game is just a massive disappointment. I feel like there was so much wasted potential with the source material. It's really a letdown that this game didn't get more attention and polish. Of course, the argument could be made that, well, Bob, this is a kid's game, and you can't expect that much quality from it. Is that really true? Yes, it's intended for a younger audience, but that doesn't mean that younger gamers deserve an underbaked game, especially one that exists as fan service for a series that is clearly very well loved. I can't really recommend the game as it's just a short, broken mess, even for longtime Beast Quest fans. If you are a fan, as much as it pains me to do so, I recommend checking out the mobile version. Yes, it has microtransactions, but it's essentially the same experience that you get with the console version, and it's free. For me, it's time to put Beast Quest back on my PS4 shelf. Maybe in the end, the lesson here is that gambling on a game purchase isn't a wise decision, even if the game is cheap. But holy crap, do you see the Five Below website? They've got Destiny 2 for $5? Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. So what did you think of Beast Quest? Would you be interested in seeing me tackle more of these weird bargain bin style games? Let me know in the comments below. There's been a lot of channel growth since my Clubhouse Games video, and I just wanted to say before I go, I've been overwhelmed by the positive response and all the positive feedback. It really means the world to have so much support doing what I love, looking at these weird, underrated, or just overlooked games. Again, thank you so much for watching. Remember to always be kind to one another, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.